Welcome, everybody. Hope you're doing well. We have our guest speaker here, Matthew Swenson, the connection and marriage coach. So we are super duper excited to get started. Many people shared things they're struggling with in their marriage, their partnership with a parenting partner, their relationship with another adult. And Matthew is here ready to give us some insight. And I love the fact that we have a marriage coach here that is a man, as most people in this group are ladies, are mamas, women. It is really nice to get the perspective of a man who gets it. I think we can all raise our hands and really appreciate that piece. Can someone comment that they can see us live in the Facebook group? Comment live if you're here live. Comment replay if you're catching the replay. All right. So, if you don't know me, I'm Megan. I am a parenting and behavior coach. I'm a foster mom and a bio mom. I have served families for over 16 years. I'm certified in positive discipline with a background in speech therapy. I serve parents in helping them connect with their kids, to get them to listen and cooperate without overwhelm and burnout. And I also help teachers do the same thing, really connect with these kiddos without overwhelm and burnout. And that is a little bit about me. You can catch more at the end. And at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Matthew to tell us what he does, and we will get started with these questions that everyone submitted. So Matthew, thank you. Tell us a little bit about you.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to be here. And Megan, I just appreciate all the things that you do for this community and their families. So many people, they don't know what to do. They don't know where to turn. They don't have hope. And you provide that. And I love that. And so I don't know if you guys are watching on Facebook, if you could throw a Megan is awesome in the chat, that would be fantastic for me. So I'm a marriage coach. Getting started with this, like I've always wanted to help people, but then I realized I couldn't help my wife. Like our marriage sucked. It was terrible. And I always had these dreams that my marriage would be so good. Like I thought my marriage would be the best marriage on the planet. And I had trained and I'd done all this stuff to get married and realized I was probably a good husband in general, but I wasn't a good husband to the woman I was married to. And I didn't realize there's a difference between being husband material and actually being a good husband to the actual woman that you're married to. And so we had this really, really crazy journey of struggling, kind of getting to the end of our ropes of like, hey, this isn't really working. And we don't like each other. And, we're kind of wrestling over who's going to get their way. Are you going to do things my way, or am I going to do things your way? And kind of got to this place where I had this revelation, and it said, love the wife you have and not the wife you want. And that completely turned our marriage to something totally different. And the crazy thing is, I think every single person that gets married, when they're envisioning what their marriage can be like, they have this kind of picture of heaven, that like, this is what I want my marriage to be, heaven on earth. And at some point we're like, oh, wow, my spouse is human. So maybe this isn't possible. And we start to let go of that dream. And when we let go of that dream, that's when the disconnection starts. That's when the drift starts. That's when we start to find other ways to find our fulfillment. And I think personally, that's really sad, one, but two, it like disconnects you from a part of yourself, the part of you that used to believe and dream and want greatness. And so I want to help people to have that heaven on earth kind of marriage. And it comes from really understanding yourself, really understanding your spouse and the way that they're built and why they're special and great, even when they suck or they suck in your mind. And then being able to figure out, how do we partner together so that our energy goes towards growing our partnership and our friendship, rather than kind of pulling us apart and saying, at some point, one of us has got to give. And so I love helping couples because it makes the biggest difference in the world, because their lives touch so many other people. And so having an awesome marriage is what we all dream about, and I help those dreams come true.
Amazing. I feel like I can always pick out themes in parenting. So as you said, how do we love the person we're married to and not the fantasy that we got married for, but really fall in love and do what we need to do for the person, for our relationship now. And that goes right back to being a parent. How do we do what we need to do and become the parent our kids need us to become, no matter what our fantasies used to be or what we had
Right.
envisioned in the past. So love that. All right, are we ready to dive into these questions?
I am.
All
Is
right.
everybody else ready?
That's right. As Matthew and I discuss these, feel free to comment in the comments and we will circle back and answer anything that has been left there. So Matthew's going to kind of lead these and then I'll tag on behind with any insight that I would love to share. So we're going to go with the most voted on question. And so that is, I don't feel supported by my husband when it comes to doing things around the house. How do I get him to get it? And so what is your take on that?
Oh, that's a heck of a question. Because I didn't get it in my marriage. I didn't get it at all. I remember my wife saying, "Hey babe, can you take out the trash?" And I said, "Yeah, of course I can." And then 5 minutes later, I'm still sitting on the couch on my phone, and I see her stomping out the door, taking out the trash. And I'm like, "No, ma'am, put that trash down. You asked me to take it out. I said I would. I'm gonna get to it." And for her, she still took out the trash. She was still mad about it. And when we finally figured out 3 years later, when she finally was able to express why she felt so strongly about it, it was that I asked you to do something and I was extending, like John Gottman calls it, a bit of connection. I was offering you an opportunity for trust and for you, really, I was offering you a piece of my heart. And you saw it as it's trash, like I'll get to it when I get to it. But you saw it as, can I trust my husband when I need him? And I did not realize it was that big of a deal. And my wife was never able to communicate to me how big of a deal it was because she was so flooded by those emotions and by what it meant about her past and about her present and about her future. Like she had all these things she's experiencing in that moment. And I'm like, babe, it's just the trash. But it's never just the trash. And so first, we got to a place where I realized that I didn't understand why this stuff was so important to my wife. And so instead of trying to understand why it was important to her, I tried to get her to come on my side and to say, babe, at some point, you just got to say it doesn't matter that much. So instead of me looking to understand her, I was trying to get her to understand me because clearly I'm a man. My side's better. Just be more rational about it. Be less emotional about it. It's just trash. Like, why are you making a big deal out of this? And so I clearly didn't get it. And instead of wanting to get it, I wanted her to do it my way. And that is what caused the drift. So then I didn't get asked to take out the trash anymore. And deep down, was I saying to myself, I've kind of won here, like if she can't wait 5 minutes, then she might as well take it out herself. So this, on top of a bunch of other things, really messed us up. So here's where the shift happened. You have to have a bigger goal for your marriage than for you guys to get along, to do things pretty well. If you don't have a higher goal for that, your husband will say, we're checking the boxes. That's your job. That's not my job. I'm not going to get into that. And oftentimes you're like, well, we didn't agree that you get to go out for this amount of time and you come home. None of this is on you and it's all on me. You don't realize how much weight this has on me. And so one of the big things to do is you've got to get a place, get some people where you can deal with those big emotions. Because if those big emotions come out on him, he can't understand you. And so for a lot of women, a lot of husbands, they'll say, man, she overreacts to everything. She's irrational, like everything's bigger than it is. And of course, hearing that, I'm horrified because I'm like, imagine saying this to your wife for 10 years or just keeping your mouth shut when you're just like, she's going through one of her things. We'll wait till she's done. And so he can't understand with that flooded emotional language. So he needs to be able to have a conversation where it's able to click for his rational brain that we need to change this. Okay. But oftentimes for women, the emotion is actually what gives you the courage to speak out about it. Anger pushes you to do something. Finally, you're upset about it and you say something about it, but he hears it as, whoa, 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 like this is too much. Why don't we just handle this like adults? And so now we got two people who aren't listening to each other. And the more your emotion builds up, the less he listens. And so what my wife and I had to do is we had to learn to speak each other's languages and become fluent at it. And so, the first thing that happened, there's a friend of mine, I asked her to help me with a marriage event. And I asked her, I said, can you write a survey or a quiz or something where people can go through and figure out kind of what's our health for our marriage in these areas? And so the craziest thing happened. My wife and I, we didn't change how we did the household chores until I saw her score. And she had been talking to me about it for 5 years. But when I saw that her score was a 3, I was embarrassed. She said, the way that we split up our household chores, I see it as a 3. And I scored it as a 7 or an 8. And I was like, I think we're doing great with this. I love the way the household chores are split. And when I saw that hers was at a 3, it was the first time I had ever seen this is broken. And I did not realize until now that if somebody asks you how I'm doing as a husband, you would say, not that great. That's the moment it hit me, when there was an actual number and proof that says this is important. And our marriage isn't good if only one person thinks it's good. And I just didn't realize that. I was like, man, one day she'll get it, how great of a husband I am. And so after we took that quiz, what you're supposed to do next is say, all right, we both pick an area, and which one are we going to go with that we're going to focus on for the next 3 months? And as the leader, as the man, I felt like, you know what? I want to go after your goal, even though I want to go after my goal, which was like a sex goal or something about our intimacy. I was like, you know what? I want to go after your goal because I know when your needs are met, our marriage is better. I'm able to figure it out for me, and we'll get through it. But your needs not being met, I can see how much that affects you. And so what we did the craziest thing is I said, what are the tasks that I could take on that will really help me to understand how much this weighs on you? So I didn't say what would be the easiest thing for me to take over, right? It would have been maybe like sweeping the floor and like, I don't know, maybe cleaning the living room. When we talked about it, it ended up being laundry, which I'd never done in my life, and the dishes, which I was like, wait a second, So you're saying if I don't do the dishes, nobody's gonna have anything to eat off of? Like, that sounds like a lot of pressure. She's like, imagine how I feel. And that's when I got it. And so it took me seeing actual proof that this area isn't good. And really, I think we shared it with someone. I think we were talking to another couple that I married. I married them, and we both took the quiz, and I had to tell them what our scores were. And I was so embarrassed. And that's what made me say, this has got to change. And so when I'm living marriage in a bubble, two people get frustrated and there's nobody outside to help pull us forward. And so I think being in community where you're really sharing the honest truth about your marriage and everybody wants their marriage to get better, I think that's huge. And then the second thing is your husband's got to be able to see in black and white with something that you didn't come up with, that this area is not where it needs to be. Because when his rational brain gets it, he'll get it forever. But as long as we're trying to use an emotional route to help him to get it, he won't get it at all. And he'll change for a week, if that. He'll change for a month, if that. But you're going to be married the rest of your life. And so how do we get him to get it for good? That's the big question. And he needs some real proof. He needs some community and some accountability. And that only comes from him knowing we got to shoot for higher and other people know about it. So that for us, that's kind of the shift that happened. And I'll see other people where their husbands finally get it because they finally put on their wife's glasses and see from her glasses. But it only happens when he gets why. It's almost like I had to appreciate that my wife's different from me for a good reason, versus before I thought she was different from me because she needs to become more like me at some point, because her life will be so much better if she wasn't so emotional about everything, and if she this, that, or the other. And then one day I realized, wow, like her differences are actually what makes me want her. Her differences are what grows me and pulls me along and makes me better. If I wanted to find somewhere that I could go and get stagnant and just chill for the rest of my life, I could have done that with, in a man cave somewhere, without dragging a woman into it. So that's the roundabout answer
Yeah.
to that question.
Thank you. What are your thoughts, mamas? Maybe there's some dads in here too. Share with us, please. So Matthew, would you be willing to share that quiz link with us at the
So
end?
it's not a link. It's not
Oh,
a link. That's the issue. It's actually in a paper book. She made a paper book that
oh,
has that quiz in it. So I need to think. I'll reach out to her
okay.
to see what's the best way. If she has a digital version, let me
Okay.
actually put it here. Reach out to Jess Short.
Yeah, that would be great if you could share that, because you're right. Sometimes people do need to see things in black and white for that perspective. And something you and I have talked so much, and something that you have said often, and I cling to this, is how are we becoming the parent, the spouse for our marriage, for our children in 10 years? We need to be thinking about how we're doing that now. How are we preparing now for when our child is 13? How are we preparing now for when our kids are teenagers? And how are we going to be having the foundations in place, the trust, the communication, cooperation, that connection to get us through those years on the same page as a married couple or as a parenting couple? So, yeah, and it takes a lot of ego checks to really, really see someone else's needs as equal to our own and do what we got to do to make it all better. So
Right.
love,
But let
love.
me just say this. You have to remember why you got married.
Mm,
And if you don't have a good why, come up with one now.
yeah.
In my marriage program, I have couples recommit to their marriage to start the program
Okay.
because they got married when their marriage was a certain thing, and it's not that anymore.
Hmm.
And so a lot of people just say, well, we just want things to be a little bit better, and they try to move on. And I'm like, no, you have the work that's in front of you to get that dream you used to have. If you guys don't feel like you're both committed to this new vision, one of you guys is going to start to wane, and then the other person is going to say, well, they're not pulling their share, and you're going to start to pull back, and then you guys are going to be right back where you started.
Hmm.
And so if you don't have a strong why for this, you're just going to live in survival mode.
Hmm.
And people are going to look at, 40% of young people don't believe in marriage anymore. And it's because we've settled and we've just gotten used to it. Marriage, maybe it just doesn't work. Maybe, marriage is good for the kids, but maybe it's not. We're not making a great case for why marriage is great. And it's because we don't have a strong why. And we're not really solving our problems. We're just trying to make them hurt less.
Okay. Seeking that why, always so important for sure. Okay. Um, let's move on to the next most popular question, and that is, my number one skill is putting myself last. I feel like I'm losing myself. How do I stop the slide? So these questions came from you as the most, right, as typical questions that you get asked, that you help married couples get through. So yeah, what are your thoughts, and how do you support when a mom, probably a wife, saying this?
Right.
Um, yeah, tell us what you think. Give us some support.
Absolutely. So, one of the greatest gifts that I believe I was ever given is that I'm a very emotional man. Now, of course, I hated it for most of my life because, you know, I'd be in school and, people would call me all types of names and, you know, I other guys are in a basketball game and they get in a fight or whatever, and then they walk away and shake hands and everybody's good. And I'm like, that's not me. I take it super personally. I can hold a grudge for the rest of my life if I wanted to. I'm so skilled at that. And so with me being a very emotional man, like I struggled a lot with when I felt like, I'm putting everybody else first and I feel like I'm built to do that. But I also feel empty. And I feel like, you know, everybody's more important than me. And I also feel like all the things I do for other people, I don't know if there's anybody that would do that for me without me asking them. And also because of the way I'm wired, I don't feel comfortable asking them to do that for me anyway. And so I had an old coaching program that I used to do specifically for women, and it was for women who their number one skill was putting themselves last. um so whether or not you believe in God or whatever, there's a scripture from the Bible, and this doesn't really have anything to do with God. So the scripture says, love others the way you love yourself, right? So that's the second greatest commandment. And when I look at it, initially you think it means love your neighbors, right? But when you actually read it the way it's supposed to be read, it says love yourself and then love your neighbors that way. And so the question is, am I loving myself? And from a place of authenticity and fullness, am I loving others? Or am I loving my kids? Am I loving my spouse? Am I loving my family from a place of emptiness, from a place of not enough, from a place of striving to prove that I'm worth it, from a place of trying to prove my value? Am I doing enough? And so when you're serving and loving people out of a place like that, what you don't realize is you're modeling for other people what it looks like to be completely empty and to keep pouring out and never be full. The full you is a gift to every person you'll ever meet. But an empty you isn't much. You think you're giving your kids everything you have, but if it's not very much, then it's just not very much. And you might think, well, I'm doing the best I can. And my question is always, are you? Because it almost seems like it's, and this was really hard for me to receive, just to say this, it's almost more selfish for me to not take care of myself and just give to other people, because me giving to other people gives me something. And I was like, oh no, you're turning this on me. I don't like how this is going. I want to stop this conversation. But I realized me giving is actually me trying to prove my worth. So even though I'm serving, helping, I'm really doing it for me. So I'm trying to serve me, but I'm doing it in a way that leaves me empty and dry. And what I need to do is, and here's what I want you guys to know, if this is a question of yours. It's built in you to take care of others. There's no amount of taking care of yourself that would ever turn you into somebody who says, man, I love taking care of myself so much, I'm just gonna let everybody else starve. It's built into you. So honestly, we're worried about the thing that we're naturally gifted at. We're worried that if I stop helping everybody, what's everybody gonna think of me? And it's like, you're gonna keep giving no matter what, because that's who you are. You have to intentionally choose to stop putting yourself last. You have to intentionally choose to stop emotion stacking, right? I call it like, you got emotional experiences that happen and you put them in a queue and you say, I'll deal with them one day. But as they stack, they actually block your heart from being able to pour out on everybody else, because you got a bunch of stoppage in there. And if you don't deal with that stuff, you're given from, it's like if you got a block, when I'm doing the dishes, when the soap builds up, there's either no soap that comes out or just a little bit. And so when you're living that way, you're trying to give and you're actually stopping yourself. You're covering the nozzle while you're trying to give to people, and you're wondering why nobody's happy. You're wondering why you never feel like you're giving enough. But the you that's full, whose heart is full, the you that's well taken care of, she can give all day and she's not worried she's going to run out. And I think a part of you wants to live that way. And I want to encourage you to do that. The greatest gift you can give your family is for you to put yourself first. I know that sounds crazy to say, but the greatest gift you can give your family is for you to put yourself first, because they will learn more from a mom who models being healthy emotionally and full and vibrant and loves herself than they do from a mom who almost takes on the identity of mom and loses the identity of who she really is.
Amazing. Yes, I think a big part of making sure our cups are full is really getting good at setting and holding boundaries firmly and kindly. what we're okay with our kids doing to us, or what our spouses are doing. Our boundaries are about what we are going to allow and what we are not going to allow around us, what we are going to do, what we are not going to do. Those are boundaries. And getting really good at setting boundaries, and not passive aggressive. You let it go one day and then you get so angry the next day. So would you say that's the biggest thing in really making sure we fill our own cups, or what is that biggest thing that helps us be authentic and serve ourselves first, put ourselves first as moms?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is actually dealing with your emotional baggage. It's a gift and a curse to be really emotional. And so if I'm not dealing with the emotions as they come up, then I don't really have a good base to be able to set these boundaries from.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to a woman yesterday who, she they've got a bunch of kids, and she filed for divorce from her husband. And she's in a place where she's just like, this is too much, I can't handle it. But she's also like, I also feel like I'm ruining my family. But she's just like, I can't be me when I'm with my husband. And so she and I talked last night for 2 hours. And as we were talking about her boundaries, we got to a place where if you don't believe that you're of immense value, then you won't hold your boundaries well. And so if you don't deal with the stuff that's inside of you, you're just putting up a fight. You're not putting up a boundary.
Yeah.
And putting up a fight isn't believable, because a man, he looks at steadiness, right? If I put up a boundary that I know should be there, I don't get emotional about it, because you're not going to cross this line. You're just not going to do it. And if you do it, I know exactly what to do about it. But when I come and say, you're not going to, when I'm doing that, it means I don't even believe my boundary.
Mm-hmm.
It means that when I leave this moment, I might forget why I'm worth protecting. And so I've got to deal with my heart stuff so that my boundaries come out of a place of groundedness and understanding who I am, because those are easy to hold, right? I've given people the perfect boundary. I've said, hey, here's the boundary. And I've told them what it is and told them how to say it. And they'll go in and say it. And then their spouse will say, what? And then they'll immediately fall apart, because they're like, it's not about the boundary. It's about me. If think about a fence, right? Do I put a fence around a broken down, beaten up house? No, I'm going to put a fence around a house that's valuable, because I want to protect what's inside. And I'm going to make sure the fence is incredible because of how much value I believe the house has. And so when I'm putting up these rash boundaries that my husband can tell, I'm just putting pegs in the ground, trying to make a show to show you're not going to make me feel small anymore. You're not going to X, Y, or Z. What we realize is he can tell you're not putting up a real boundary. He can tell you're acting emotionally, and he's going to go back to, she's irrational. She'll come back from this. She'll come back. And if I don't actually find me and who I am and the crazy amount of value that I have as me, then my boundaries will be more like random fires that my husband's just waiting to go out, so that he could go back to living how we normally live. She's trying to mess everything up.
Yeah.
But what's crazy is when I talk to husbands, the thing that attracted them to their wife the most on the front end before they got married was her confidence, was who she was and how she showed up. But oddly enough, men try to take that away as they're married to their wife, because it makes their life harder, and it means they've got to think twice about what they say, and it just means like, oh, I got to get home and think, did I do this, did I do that, and the other. And so men actually kind of try to grind away a little bit at that, and in order for their own selfishness to self-preserve for themselves, that confidence shows up as the man not feeling respected. I don't feel like I'm the king of the house. I don't feel like this, that, or the other, and that's a personal problem for him. But a lot of times the women who really depend on their husbands allow him to shave away pieces of their value and their worth. And most of the people that I talk to that are separated or getting divorced or whatever, it's because at some point she says, how long can you let somebody pull you down? until you have to walk away. And so when I know who I am, and my value is not based on who I am as a mother, my value is not based on who I am as a wife, my value is not based on who I am as a daughter or who I am as a teacher or who I am as whatever, but my value is placed in something that's real and true and doesn't change. I don't worry. Like, those people don't need to learn boundaries. They might work on their language or whatever, but those boundaries come from a strong person. And so I help people to kind of sift out that emotional stuff and really honor it, because those emotions are there for a reason. They tell you something's off. They tell you my heart doesn't feel safe. They tell you things that you're supposed to listen to, but then the next thing you need to do is process those things so that you can get what you need out of it. So this woman last night, she said, my husband told me he wants us to get back together. And she said, there's some changes that got to happen. And I said, well, what changes need to happen? And she said, honestly, I have no idea. I was hoping you could help me with that. So what we did is I had her look at this thing that I show people and said, hey, what desires on this list, these are psychological desires, these are the deep desires that motivate our behavior. I said, which of these 16 things do you look at and say, man, that's what I need the most? And if I had that, that would make me feel more open to trusting my husband again. And she said, wow, one of them is love. And I said, okay, what does love mean to you? And she explained to me what love means to her. And I said, what could your husband either stop doing or start doing that would make you feel loved? And she said, if his house was more clean, and if his car was more clean, and if he, got the kids involved, all this kind of stuff. So we worked that all the way through for her to say clearly what she wanted from him and to not feel like she needed to explain it, to not feel like she needed to defend it, and to also not offer it as a suggestion. That was very difficult for her. So we practiced.
Yep.
And I said, let's pretend I'm your husband, and I said, okay, what would you say? And she said it the first time, and she said, this felt so uncomfortable. And I said, that's okay. You did great. What felt uncomfortable about it? We worked through the words that felt uncomfortable for her. And then we worked through what made it hard, and we tried it again. And she got to a place at the end. She sent me a message and said, Matthew, I just want to thank you for helping me find my voice. And then she sent me a screenshot of her sending that boundary to her husband and him doing what he never does, because she never expresses herself this way. And he said, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to get the kids involved to help. And deep down, that's actually what she wanted. But I said, you can't tell him how to do it. That was really hard for her. You can't tell him how to do it. And he did it the way she dreamed about. And she was just like, I can't believe you helped me find my voice. Thank you so much. I mean, my family might be saved because of this. And so the boundaries come from really knowing what's in my heart, getting it clear enough so that I can express it and not feeling like I owe anybody anything for telling them, here's the boundary I have, or here's what I need. So yeah.
Cool. So yeah, boundaries again are, and that's why having a coach, first of all, is so useful. A marriage coach, a parenting coach, whatever we want to get better at and understand more deeply, or horseback riding coach, whatever it is. But when we're thinking about relationships, to dig through that baggage and someone to ask us the questions that we just can't ask ourselves. So that's why that's so important. But to circle back to boundaries, it's really never about you have to do this. It's really about, when this happens, I'm going to do this, and finding the courage to do that. Like, when someone's yelling at me, I'm walking away. But it's much more than that. And that's why having a coach is so beneficial. So awesome. Thank you for that. And amazing that you were able to help her find her voice that had been squashed down for so long, and give her that confidence to hopefully save what she wanted at the very, very beginning. So awesome.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And her husband reached out to me today, and he said, hey, I want you to help us, because I saw how helpful your conversation was with her. And so I'm excited for them. It's really cool.
I think at the beginning and the end of the day, we all want to do well. Our husbands, our wives, we all want the best. It's just, there's so much stuff that gets in the way, and sometimes we lose sight. So, yeah. Okay. The next one. How do I get past the hurt how do I get past the hurt of feeling misunderstood or neglected by my husband?
How do I get past the hurt of feeling misunderstood or neglected by my husband? That's a good one. So, I feel this one very personally because this was my experience. So because I'm the very emotional man, my wife was kind of the opposite. So she's more the logistical, the straight line, linear thinker. And so I felt neglected and misunderstood often. And no matter how I explained it, no matter what I asked for her to do or change, she didn't do it. And so I ended up hitting this place once I got hopeless, where I finally was just like, what's going on here? Like, is there something I'm missing? And the thing that I heard was, you know, she doesn't have it to give it to you. And I was like, no way. Like, I've been wanting this from her this whole time and thinking she just doesn't want to give it to me. And the reason it hurt me so much is because I believed that she had it and she was withholding it. But what I found out was she didn't have a healthy childhood. She didn't have people modeling for her what this looks like to do it well. And for her, entering into conversations with me was always risky because she has this huge desire to come through, this desire to be successful, this desire to come off as competent. And she knows in matters of relationship, she's got a very low chance of accomplishing that because I always want more. I always say, you're not doing this right. I always say, hey, can you just make this shift, And she's like, man, it's crazy that at home, it's impossible for me to feel like I'm doing a good job until I completely change it to a different person. My wife probably, her thought was my husband probably wishes he married someone else. Someone that has this drive for success, competence, come through, which is most men, they'll never thrive under that kind of pressure because they know they're already starting from less of a deck than you are because you're more emotionally aware, you're more socially aware, you have more social skill. And he's like, there's no way I win this battle. And so the first thing we have to do is accept what is and let it hurt. Oftentimes we don't want to let it hurt because it means what I want, I can't have. And I have to accept that I just can't have it. But until I accept what is, I can't create something better. I'm going to fight with them over the fact that they should be the person that I wanted them to be, that they should be more X, Y, or Z. But when I accept things for what they are, it makes every situation its own situation instead of every situation reminding you of 25,000 times that he's done this before. He never does this. He always does this. Like when I have those kind of feelings, there's no possible way to move forward and there's no possible way for him to fix it. When those conversations start, the crazy thing is both of you guys at some point in the conversation know this isn't going to end well. But we don't end the conversation there because we feel like we're too deep into it. And so it just ends badly. But, at least she got out what she wanted to say. And he's like, well, at least I sat there and was her punching bag. Hopefully that helped. And he realizes that didn't help because she's going to come back to beat me up about it again later because I'm not going to do it well again. And so now he doesn't believe he can be successful. So he's not going to put 100% of his effort into it. You don't believe that he's capable or that he wants to. And so you don't bring your whole heart to the equation anymore either. And there goes the distance we talked about, the disconnection. If I'm putting 25% into my marriage, how do I get 100% value? But that's what we think. At some point, this will just change because they'll get it. And so this is similar to what I talked about earlier, where I've got to get into a place and a space where I'm able to heal from feeling misunderstood and neglected. So when we come down to that wheel I told you about with these psychological desires, I have this huge desire to be known. Being known is to be understood, to feel like they see me. And so when I felt like, my wife would say, I'd say, when you think about that classic example of, hey, where do you want to eat for dinner? And the other person's like, and they start suggesting things and they're like things that you never want to try. And you're listening like, how are you supposed to be my best friend? And you don't even know what I like to eat. And so you take it personally, right? And so because you have a big desire to be known, when your spouse doesn't meet your desire to be known, it hurts more than it hurts in other places. Because this is supposed to be the person that you put all your eggs into their basket. And for them to years into your relationship still not know you, it's like, I have failed. I have lost. The thing my heart wants most, I'll never get. And I just have to accept it. And so I've got to work through this part of my heart because I'm expecting things from my spouse that they can't provide. And so if I expect my spouse to be able to give me 100% of the needs that I want met, and that they're supposed to meet 100% of these needs for the rest of my life, I don't want to be married to a human. I want to be married to a robot. I want to be married to somebody that's perfect. I didn't realize I married a human. And so I've got to actually work through that pain in my heart. I've got to work through why I took my desire to be known and why I put all that weight on my spouse. A lot of people disagree with me on this, and I'm okay with that. But that was unfair to your spouse to put all that weight on them because they can't feel that need for you. They can feel it to an extent, but they could never feel it at the level that you desire for them to. And so you're giving them an impossible task that no matter what they do, they're going to lose. No matter what they do, they're not going to be enough. And so there's no way they can win. And for you, you're going to be mad at them about it for the rest of your life. Or you'll let go of it, but you'll let go of it in a way that says, I'll never trust them that way again. Mm-hmm. That doesn't help you either. And so what I've got to do is I've got to take that weight off of them. And I've got to make sure I put it in places where I can actually get that need filled and make sure my marriage is a place where my spouse is going to do the best they can. So we're going to fight here to build things in to our marriage, things that are regular things we put on the calendar to help us to feel known, but I can't expect it at the level of heaven, right? People want to feel known at a level where they're like, I didn't even say a word and they knew. I just made a face and he knew exactly what to do for the next 48 hours. He did everything right because of the face that I made. That's what we desire. And I don't think that's a bad thing. But if we put that on our spouse, it's an impossible task. And so first, we got to look at ourselves and say, I need to do some forgiving, right? But the other thing we have to do is say, what's a respectful, what's a reasonable amount to put on my spouse so that we can build towards raising that amount? My wife and I, we built something into our marriage. It's crazy. So my wife and I meet every week. And for most people, they think, oh, okay, so a business meeting, like married people, talk about the week and stuff. And I'm like, no, that's not what we do. This meeting is built this way. Usually I don't share this with people that aren't paying me, but I want to share this with you guys because I think it could be helpful. So in this meeting, the first thing we do is we start off with gratitude. So we share one thing in the last week that we're grateful for that our spouse did. Somebody drew 7 dots on this huge whiteboard and they asked, what is the first thing you see when you look at this? And they said 7 black dots. And he said, you see, what's crazy is this whole whiteboard is white and your eye was attracted to the 7 black dots. That's what you brought your attention to. And so we're not looking at what's the good. We're not looking at what I can be grateful and have gratitude for that we see. We look at, if you would just fix this and get this right, I'd finally not have to worry about the whiteboard at all anymore. And I'm like, that's not marriage. And so we first share what we're grateful for. One thing, we look back over the last week that we have gratitude for each other for doing it. We say, hey, I'm grateful you did this. It meant so much. Thank you so much. The next thing is where people freak out. So the next thing we do is we look at, I have an emotion wheel or something like that. And both of us share one strong emotion that we felt in the last week. And what happened? And there are ground rules. So in these rules, our spouse can't give us advice. They're not listening to respond. They're listening to hear our heart. And so once I share, hey, here's something I felt this week, grateful, because I got to sit with Meagan in her community and just share and hopefully help some people with their hearts. And my wife, what she'll do, she'll use one of our 3 prompts to respond. And she'll say, as you were sharing, what I felt was, admiration. Because I love that you've taken the things that you've applied to our marriage that have changed our marriage, and now you're helping other people with it. And so she didn't give me advice. She didn't try to answer, and it just became a heart-to-heart connection. And that's it. And then the other person shares, and we do the same thing. And so I have this huge desire to be known, but my wife doesn't naturally know how to seek right? And so I want to be known. I want her to seek me, but she doesn't naturally know how to do that. So we built something into our marriage where we both get to do it for each other instead of me hoping she does it and being disappointed that she doesn't. It happens every week. And so now I no longer think she hasn't asked me any questions about me in 5 weeks. It's like, no, that'll never happen because we build it into our marriage because it's too important to miss. And so we decided to accept our marriage for what it was and build in the things we need so that we can have that heaven on earth experience. And, you know, for other couples, I want them to do the same, but for most of them, they're like, we're not in agreement about what we want in our marriage. And I think that's the big thing. If we can partner together on what we want, we can start to create systems that build that in and keep it there. So we can almost like have that amazing marriage on autopilot, which is kind of what we want. We don't want it to feel like a bunch of work and steps. So yeah.
Wow. Yep, I love that. Building or accepting the marriage, the relationship for what it is, and building in things to make sure needs are met. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that with us, even though we're not paying you. All right, we have about 8 minutes left. Let's see. Let's see. I think the one that I would love to talk about at this end is parenting differences in a marriage. What are your thoughts? Let's say, and this is the typical story I get. Dads tend to want to stay more on the punitive side. Moms this is just the tendencies. This is definitely not, true for everybody.
Universal, right?
Moms tend to want to, as brain research comes out, they're really trying to, maybe we need to back off the punitive stuff and try a different way. And what I'm seeing is, as moms back off, if they're not gaining the tools, then everyone's feeling very lost. And then the dads are coming in with more punitiveness. Moms are even backing off any more to keep that balance. So it's a really big disconnect. And so what are your thoughts on how to help parents, at least if they don't want to be on the same page, at least accept each other for the way they want to parent?
Oh, now that's a really hard question. And a part of me says that that's not possible. I think it's possible in a way, but here's why I say that initial thought was that it's not possible. It's like if I, gave you and your husband, I don't know, a blade of grass or a flower, and both of you guys wanted to take care of it in different ways, and both of you guys believed that your way would actually help that flower to grow long term in the best way possible. But they also thought that the other person's way would actually make it wilt and die. How do I get to the place where I'm okay with you wanting to go at a route that's going to ruin the flower? That's not being a good friend. If I'm a good friend, I'm going to say, hey, I hear you. I hear where you're coming from. I'm not going to push you, but I do want you to know I'm not so sure how that's going to work. I'm here with you, and that's a friend, but that's because the friend owns the situation. But with a, mom and dad, we both own the situation. So the objective is not to accept each other's perspective. The objective is to have help with being able to get on the same page. Every couple I've ever met wants to be on the same page. Most of them don't know how to do it. So I had this crazy thing that happened, and it's embarrassing to talk about, but I'm going to talk about it. And so my daughter, I wanted her ears pierced, just because my family, they've always had their ears pierced, and my sisters all, like, it's just a big deal for our family. I didn't know why. I didn't even realize it's something I held so dear until I had a daughter.
Oh my goodness.
And so when the topic came up, I literally said, we're getting her ears pierced, and there's no discussion is needed. And I've never talked to my wife that way. Never. And I was like, yeah, honestly, we don't need to talk about it. It's already decided. And I just walked away. And so when we revisited later, it was like, wow, like, I felt emotional about it. Like I felt like if you ask me about it again, I'm going to flip something. And it's like, hey, we're just talking about hypothetically if we're going to do it now or let her decide later or whatever. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You don't get to decide this. And it was like, where is this coming from? And I realized this. So, I'm a Christian. And so the Christian idea is that marriage is all about becoming one, right? And so the idea in this situation for us was I didn't want to become one. I wanted this to be my decision to make, and she needed to accept it. And then we move forward and we're all good. And once her ears are pierced, you never have to worry about it again. She's a baby. She won't complain about it. And I'm doing crazy eyes and everything, and I'm like almost using my aggression to try to get my way. And it's like, man, how do I get to that place where that happened? But you don't realize until you get married how we're both dealing with our own egos and our selfishness, of like, I, mine. It's almost like I'm like, the child is ours, but her ears are mine. I get to decide this. You don't even get to have a say in it. And so the objective is for us to figure out a way to talk through, there's a couple that I help with this, of talking through what's the end goal that you're looking for? Because I need to help you to loosen up your grip on what you think is the way. Because nobody knows the way. We all have a way. We all tried things and they failed. We've all tried things and they've been successful. But we need to figure out what's the end goal you're looking for. And let's work together on a solution to get there. Because if we come up with a solution together, if it doesn't work, guess what? We look at ourselves and we say, how can we fix this? But if I let you pick it and it doesn't work, I'm going to say, you did this, you fix it. That's not marriage. That's not marriage. That's a terrible business that's going to, at some point, belly up. And so the objective of a marriage is everything that comes into it is a new opportunity for us to practice partnership. And the things that come in that are difficult, I think that's exciting because it says, look, I found something we're not on the same page about. Let's work on getting on the same page about this, because a great marriage is two people that learn to do life together. But if we keep these things separate, we'll stay separate people. Divorce is easy when our bank accounts are separate and we keep our things separate, and I have my stuff and you have your stuff and it's mine. We're not even really married. We've come together. We might live in the same place, but we're doing our own thing. And those are the marriages that don't make it. And so my challenge, and I'll have people get in a room with me and I'll say, why is it important to you that it's done that way? And a dad will say, because their behavior reflects me. And that's when we finally see you believe that your success is tied to a 3-year-old's behavior. You need help, sir. And so let's help you with that, because that child can't even control their behavior. To think that you're going to control their behavior to make it look like you're a good dad. Why are you trying to control your image in this way when your job is actually to raise this child to be a great teenager and a great adult? Your vision is so small because you believe your value, your worth as a man is attached to whether or not your 3-year-old takes other people's toys or not. And you'll spank them for it because you don't value the process. You look at the moment and say, if he's not making me look good in this moment, everybody's going to regret it. And it's like, guys, we got to work through this. And for some people, I've talked to them and it's like, I'll tell moms, Mom, you need to keep fighting for this. You need to keep fighting for it. I know you're tired. And I know it feels like his personality is so big, your husband. And I know he might even get mean, but you have to keep fighting for this. Because if you just let him take over from here, the part you were meant to play in nurturing and protecting your child, you'll miss out on it because you let your husband scare you out of it. So we need help. You need to get in a room with somebody who can help you guys sort out, why is this so important? There's a woman that I coach, her mom wasn't the best mom, and ended up actually like suing her when she became an adult over something that had happened, like just traumatic things. And so the reason why she was so set on doing things a certain way with her kids was actually because of trauma she'd experienced. And so the reason they couldn't talk through it successfully is because it's tied to 20 years of experience. So I needed to sit with her and untie this stuff so that they could finally have a conversation about it. And now they parent together and it's fun and they love it and their kids are thriving and growing. And they were both able to work through what's actually making me want to fight my spouse over this. Because the fact that I want to fight them over it means there's more going on inside of me than just my way's right, your way's right, my way's right. And so helping people to sort through that stuff is really important because I don't think you can get to a place in true partnership where you say we agree to disagree about the most important thing in our lives, our kids.
And that's the story I get so much. I want to do this. I can't get him on board. And so they just stay stuck. And that's why, yeah, getting so brave, not letting go of what you know is important and getting help. So, Mathew, do you find that women come to you and it's that initiation and then the husband comes along, or is it more husbands coming along saying we need help? And then the wife comes along after?
It's more wives than husbands. Whenever I get a husband, it means that it's just about over. A husband only comes when he's like, I've lost. And this is the closest I've ever gotten to admitting defeat, is saying, hey, can you help me? And I'll say, help you with what? And he'll say, get my wife, to help our relationship be better. And I say, well, what's the state of your relationship right now? And he's like, well, she won't talk to me. And, we haven't talked in this amount of time. And I'm like, wait, it sounds like your relationship's already over. And he's like, well, you got to fight, right? And I'm like, well, you could have fought when you had the relationship and you didn't. That's probably what she thinks, isn't it? He's like, yeah, that is what she thinks. And so for most people, it's the wives that come first. And they say things have got to change to be better. And I'll ask, would you be okay with me reaching out to your husband? And when she says yes, of course, once I get on the call with the husband's like, oh my gosh, like this approach makes so much sense. And it doesn't sound like this, touchy-feely, like you're going to side with her the whole time kind of approach. It actually sounds like something that'll help us to build something better here, which is kind of what we wanted. We just could never get in agreement about what that looked like. And so, yeah, it's usually the women that come first because the emotions are stronger and it feels more urgent. For a husband, it doesn't feel urgent until his life's falling apart. And the boxes he set up of my marriage is good, my business is good, my job's good, my this is good. And he's like, wait, who knocked my marriage box over? And she's like, it's been a mess for years. You just didn't notice. And he's like, man, I thought it was fine. It's crazy. So it's the wives.
Okay, well, mamas and dads, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody, if you're feeling that you need help in your partnership with your spouse or your parenting partner, Mathew is the perfect person to go to, really looking at both sides, not having bias, and helping you reach that end goal, the reason why you got married in the first place. So we will put Mathew's links to reach out to him in the notes, in the comment section, so that you can do that when you are ready, hopefully sooner rather than later. Time doesn't stop. And we're going to spend the time in one way or the other, in frustration and guilt and despair, overwhelm, wanting to tap out, or we can spend the time doing the work we need to do to rebuild the relationships that we want. So, all right. And so if you're looking for, that's for marriage. If you're looking for marriage coaching, reach out to Mathew. If you're working for parent coaching, really working on your relationship with kids, understand their behaviors, developing your toolbox so you know what to say and how to say it. Look at your own ego, why you have these beliefs about what your kiddo does, all that good stuff. You can reach out to me. So, and my link will be in the comments too. And with that, thank you everybody for coming. Mathew, any last minute things, or are we good?
We're good. I have a marriage event coming up September 22nd and 23rd, called the Heaven on Earth Blueprint Marriage Workshop, where I'm helping people to almost like wake up that dream for what you thought your marriage could be and chase it again. Like you're young, and I'm like, that's a goal that we never should have let die.
Mhm.
And so if you're somebody that's interested in having a heaven on earth kind of marriage, and you think your spouse would be into it, or you're not sure if your spouse would be into it at all, if that's just an inkling that you have, I'll put my link here in the comments section for you to get to my profile and shoot me a message. I'm doing invite only this time. And so this is the only community that I'm inviting to that event. And I've got some people who are already looking to join. And so I'm keeping this small because I am going to be, well, my wife is going to be delivering a baby in 26 days. And so we're keeping it small intentionally to make sure I'm available for her, because that's important. I'm going to be coaching her through birth, and so I'm excited about that. But if you're interested, you click on the link and shoot me a message on Facebook. And yeah, that's all I've got for today. Thank you for letting me speak to your people today, Meagan.
You are welcome. They are the best, and we're all in it to grow and do the hard stuff. So, all right, everyone, thank you for coming. We'll look for those comments and we will catch you later. Bye.